Happy Thanksgiving Eve, guys, and welcome back to Hashtag AskGSM for Wednesday, November 23rd, 2022, episode 469 here today. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great holiday week. If you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, then just have a great week in general. We got a lot of great questions, per usual. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. So let's get right into it. We're going to start with the YouTube questions here. Let's see. Nike only, their question was, should WWE turn Drew McIntyre heel after Survivor Series? I don't think so. I mean, SmackDown already has LA Knight, in no particular order as far as where they're ranked and where they're positioned on the show, but for heels, you know, they just got LA Knight on the heel side towards the top of the card, feuding with Bray Wyatt. You have Karrion Kross, who was at one point the second top heel on the show, positioning-wise, I guess, internally on the roster. Doesn't really feel that way now, but he's still a top heel on the show. You have Karrion, LA Knight, Santos is a little bit further down, but you have Gunther as well as the Intercontinental Champion, and obviously Roman Reigns. Unless you were to turn one of those other people babyface, I would not turn Drew McIntyre heel, because he would simply just drag everyone else down on the internal roster by doing so. I don't think you need to turn Santos or LA Knight right now. Karrion's still a heel. Gunther, definitely not. And obviously not Roman. So, no. I mean, had you suggested that coming out of Clash, when he lost to Roman, it's like, okay, that might work, but he's still very over. I don't know what you do with him after Survivor Series, but I wouldn't turn him heel. I would figure something else out. Maybe he even challenges at some point Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship and comes up short, but that is a fresh match I would love to see, preferably for that championship. Central Man Network's question was, and we're going to go all over the place here, I haven't organized the questions yet. Their question was, should Bayley be champion again in 2023? Yeah, I don't see why not. I love Bayley. She hasn't been champion since she was SmackDown Women's Champion 2 years ago, and obviously she was gone for a year as well due to injury. Yeah, she doesn't need to be champion, but if the right opportunity presents itself after falling short against Bianca twice in the last couple of months, then yeah, sure, I don't see why not. Their second question, should Billy Corgan pull the plug on the NWA, or can they still recover? I don't think he needs to pull the plug on the NWA. The NWA is going to pull the plug on itself by making Tyrus the NWA World's Heavyweight Champion. I mean, it's just inevitable at this point. Will he pull the plug, though, in all seriousness? Probably not. He's going to see it through till the end, and I commend him for that. There's no real reason to end the product if he still feels they have some sort of an audience and they're still doing some sort of numbers. They're not completely running empty buildings now. They are having some people at their shows, so it's not attracting nobody. So they're going to run it into the ground until they can do no more shows. And I applaud him for that. Just to pull the plug, just because the show is bad, probably isn't ideal from a business standpoint, but people will probably have to force their hand at some point if they stop watching the show, which has already happened for a lot of fans. Micah Does It, their question was, I feel like, let's see, what did he say here? He said, I feel like all the fans want Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns night one at WrestleMania, but what I think we will get is Cody Rhodes versus Baron Corbin. Instead, I can't see anybody else for Cody to feud with going into WrestleMania. If it's not Reigns, do you think this will be the match? I mean, I don't know about you. I know he might be a babyface now, although he kind of cut a heel promo on Raw. Seth Rollins, whether he's U.S. champion or not. I don't want to see Rollins and Cody again. We already got that match 3 times earlier this year. But listen, I would see Cody versus Rollins another 10 times if it meant not getting Cody versus fucking Baron Corbin at WrestleMania. I don't think... Listen, I know Baron Corbin's been pushed more lately on Raw. I don't think Triple H sees that as a worthy opponent for Cody, and justifiably so. I like Baron Corbin, but even the Drew McIntyre match with Corbin at Mania this year was a complete waste of Drew McIntyre. There wasn't a whole lot else for him to do, unfortunately. But they've brought in so many other people, called up so many people from NXT. To waste Cody on fucking Baron Corbin would be incredulous. So I would really hope they don't do that. If it's not Roman, there's a chance he doesn't face Roman at WrestleMania. There's a very decent chance of that happening. I don't think they would use Cody on fucking Baron Corbin. You say there's no one else, but I mean, it doesn't even have to be a heel or a babyface, but I can think of, again, Finn Balor's an option. Let it just on Raw alone. It could even be on SmackDown. But AJ Styles, Finn Balor. You could do Seth Rollins again. Bobby Lashley. I mean, these are all people that are much higher up on the totem pole and far more interesting opponents for Cody Rhodes than Baron fucking Corbin, who again I like, but that's just that's just comical. I'm sorry. His second question: now that MJF is world champion, who, if you had to pick, would be your number one feud and match that you want to see? For me personally, I feel like Jeff Hardy versus MJF for the world title could be really good for a pay-per-view match or a Dynamite special. LOL, MJF versus Sting could be good also. I mean, I don't know if you're talking to LOL about the MJF and Jeff match. That's not going to happen. I think if Jeff comes back, they have to relegate him to a certain part of the show, because if you can't trust the guy to stay fucking sober, how can you even remotely consider putting him in a world title situation, whether he wins or not? Although that does sound like a fun match. MJF and Sting would be cool. Yeah, if Sting was built up, listen, maybe not for a pay-per-view, but he's been undefeated, I think, in tag team matches since he came to AEW. That doesn't really get talked about a lot, but I don't think he suffered a single loss since coming to the company. Now, he hasn't been involved in any singles matches, but I think that's been by design, obviously. It would be cool if they built up Sting for one last world title opportunity and then he loses in the end, and then maybe it's a title versus career match. I think that'd be great, but Sting doesn't really sound like that he's ready to wrap it up anytime soon. So probably not. By the time that he is, I don't know if MJF will be champion. So it does sound like a fun match. I was telling RJ the other day, him and Jungle Boy running that back from a few years ago. Him and Darby Allin running that back from a few years ago. Him and Wardlow running that back from earlier this year. Kind of taking MJF's all of his old rivals. And what's old is new again with the World Championship on the line. So any one of those matches I feel like would be really, really good. But the other two you mentioned would work as well. Jeff, I don't know what the fuck his status is. And Sting, I didn't really think about that, but that could work as well too. Let's see. Their next question: how cool would it be if CM Punk actually did return and aligned himself with William Regal and MJF, since the fans have now turned on him? I've seen other people say that obviously that's not going to fucking happen, but that would honestly be pretty cool. That would be pretty cool if somehow they worked it out. Punk was able to come back, and we got Punk, Regal, and MJF. Now, we don't need another stable, but some sort of an alliance I feel like would be pretty fucking cool. Because, again, people have turned on due to the whole elite bullshit. If they can, and we said this at the time, if they can somehow work it out, and Punk's actions were just, I guess, too egregious to justify keeping him, which, whatever. But if they were able to work it out, put the personal shit aside, and do what was right for business, they would have a Punk versus Kenny Omega feud on TV. And ensure it doesn't go past the personal level. I mean, they can get personal, but have a work turn into a shoot, so to speak, and have the two get more angry at each other and shit and whatever. So anyway, that's not going to happen. And it would be cool if they, put their shit aside and they work together for the betterment of the business and created a great storyline and got MJF involved, and that would be sick. That's not going to happen, though. Let's see. The last YouTube question is from Billy here, and he also said from last week that he was a big fan of Burn It to the Ground by Nickelback. Great live performance of it, too, on Raw, if they did it on Raw. They never did do it on Raw, I don't think, but I actually did see Nickelback live with Fozzy, if you could believe it, 3 years ago, a couple months before COVID. But it was a great time, and I already liked a lot of Nickelback's songs anyway. I know, shoot me, but Burn It to the Ground being one of them, with it being the Raw theme for so long. I don't think it was the last song they played, but it was towards the end of the concert, and it was fucking awesome. Hearing that song in person was great, so I can attest to that being really cool. Anyway, so his question was, Graham, do you expect it to be Becky, Charlotte, or Sasha as the fifth member of Team Bianca? I can genuinely see there being a twist where two of the three appear at WarGames. I'm not denying that. I really fucking hope it's not Charlotte. I didn't even really... The funny thing is that we're all saying, it's got to be Becky or Sasha. No one... I mean, even Charlotte is far more likely because she's not hurt. Sasha is on the outs with the company. I will say this as far as... Because, again, I've said this before. She's doing a movie right now. They're still in the process of filming said movie. I don't know if they're going to be filming it this weekend. They're filming it in fucking Massachusetts. So, I mean, it's not far from where she is. I don't know if she's staying there or if she went home. I don't know. I don't know where she lives. I think she lives in fucking Florida. I don't really give a shit. But my point is this, is that I think if they wanted for her to be at the show, and it's not as if they're filming on Saturday, and I have no confirmation on that. I know they're still filming the movie, as far as from what I can understand. I think if she wanted to be there, if they wanted her there and she wanted to come back, she could probably be there. So she is an option. I'm just not sure whether she is officially coming back on that show or not. And then she could just, do the movie on another part of the fucking week and then come back to the company. It's not going to take that much longer, I don't think. There was like a delay in production or whatever. But anyway, so you have that, and then you have Becky. Becky, I've heard, she's not ready yet. That could be just, that could be a fucking work. She could be back now, and we just don't know it. I'm hoping it's Becky. I'm thinking it's Candice, but then again, Candice might also be hurt as well. I'm really hoping it's not fucking like Raquel Rodriguez or someone like that. Charlotte has zero history with Damage Control. Sasha doesn't either, but at least Sasha has the Bayley connection, so that makes sense. And she and Bianca were former enemies, so again, that makes sense. Becky in storyline was taken out by Damage Control. So again, you could tell that story as well. Becky makes the most sense to me. Candice is logical. I feel like a lot of people would just be underwhelmed by that. But even she would be the Rock compared to fucking like Raquel Rodriguez. I mean, no one gives a shit about that at all. So of the three, could two of the three appear on Saturday? Sure. Could Becky be the partner and Sasha comes back afterward? Absolutely. Charlotte could come back as well. Maybe she goes after Ronda Rousey. No fucking thanks. But yeah, I could certainly see that. Charlotte should be back anytime now. She's been gone for over 6 months, and I don't think anyone's really batted an eyelash. But yeah, no, we'll see on Saturday who comes back. I'm thinking Becky's the most likely, and that's what I'm personally hoping for, but I guess we'll find that on Friday SmackDown when they reveal the 5th woman. For Facebook, we got David M. from Facebook. His question was, what's your all-time dream WarGames 5-on-5 match? I'm not really good with, like, dream matches, like dream Survivor Series matches, although we did one for Survivor Series for Bleacher Report, and mine will be out. I mean, I think the article's coming out in a couple days. My team, I think, is pretty sick, so you can check it out when it comes out. But anyway, so and that was like a draft too. That was really fun. For my dream WarGames match, I came up with this in like a minute, but I would do the Dangerous Alliance, not the Dangerous Alliance, but a lot of Paul Heyman's clients. I would have it be Brock, and I like to have a common theme throughout the teams for the most part. But for Heyman's team, it would be Brock, it would be Stone Cold, it would be Roman Reigns, CM Punk, and Rob Van Dam. And they would take on John Cena, all the like the babyface faces of the company, aside from Stone Cold, who's on the other team. It would be John Cena, Hulk Hogan. It would be Cena, Hogan, Backlund, San Martino, and was there another one? I thought there was another one. Oh, The Rock. I'm sorry. So The Rock, Cena, Hogan, San Martino, and Backlund, and all in their prime, obviously, versus Roman, Brock, Punk, RVD, Stone Cold. I feel like that'd be a pretty great-ass fucking match. First Twitter question from noob_n_co-tv. Their question was, do you think that AEW needs to drop the whole interim tagline on its champions because it really annoys me and it's not marketable? I don't know about any of that, but as far as it just being stupid, it's fucking dumb. I mean, they did it with the TNT title. They did it with the world title. Listen, I mean, the TNT title thing didn't really make a whole lot of sense because Cody was gone for like fucking 3 days. CM Punk was gone for a short period of time. Thunder's been gone now for 4 months. 3 months? 4, not even actually, probably like 2.5 months. But we don't know when she's going to be back. So her reign is being extended by doing nothing. Listen, I think going forward, they need to get rid of the whole interim bullshit. Don't do the interim stuff again. And they're trying to be creative and different, and I know UFC does it and shit. In wrestling, it just doesn't make sense. So you got to have title changes, and recognizing the person in the interim who's still here as the champion, calling them the interim champion just puts a label on them, and it's hard to take their reign seriously. So yeah, I would do away with the interim shit at some point soon once they find out Rose's recovery timeline, and then we'll go from there, and hopefully they never do it again. At Uwagu91, his first question was, what are your thoughts on Will Ospreay? I think Will Ospreay is great. I've said that before. I'm a fan of Will Ospreay. Of all the people in New Japan, I know I'm a basic fan as far as like liking all the top guys like Okada, and I love Ibushi when he's there. Ibushi and Tanahashi and Will Ospreay as well. Jay White. Ospreay is awesome. I think I've actually become a bigger fan of his in the last couple of years since he became a heavyweight in New Japan and kind of moved away from the high-flying stuff. And he was good as a high-flyer. I saw him several times in Ring of Honor, and he was always good, but I don't know. I've been a bigger fan of him lately as far as like the leader of United Empire. He just comes across like a total star to me. And I'm looking forward to him and Kenny Omega at Wrestle Kingdom in January. His second question, do you see Sami Zayn turning on the Bloodline this Saturday? No, I mean, I'm not really sure why Sami would turn on the Bloodline. He loves the Bloodline. The Bloodline would turn on him. The way I see it playing out is this. Sami's in the match, and it's not 4-on-4, because he's eating the pin, and Roman's going to see that as a sign of weakness for the Bloodline, because the Bloodline has barely lost since they've been together in any multi-man match. The Usos have barely lost in multi-man matches. I feel like they will lose this match, and as a result of that, they will boot Sami. Maybe not next week, but it'll plant the seeds for the split. Maybe around the Rumble they'll do it, maybe next month. Maybe it'll be next Friday on SmackDown. I don't know. But I do see him eating the pin. I guess it could be anyone else, but Solo hasn't been pinned yet. Roman has not been pinned in 3 years. I would not have him get pinned here until he loses the championship. The Usos, I wouldn't do that either. I guess you could have, like Sami and Jay are the ones with issues. So, like, Sami pinning Jay would be great, but Sami's on Jay's team. So, I would have Kevin Owens pin Sami Zayn, and that paves the way for the two teaming in the not-too-distant future. So, I don't see Sami turning on them. I feel like there's more money because he's such a simp for them. Them turning on him, and that's what turns him babyface. I feel like that just makes the most sense. His next question, who do you see ending Chris Jericho's Ring of Honor World title reign? I mean, this is pretty obvious, but it's got to be Daniel Garcia. I mean, the idea that Garcia was so popular at one point in late summer, early fall, where they ended up turning him back heel and realigning him with Chris Jericho was pretty fucking dumb because they cooled him off pretty quickly. He's barely been on the show since then. I'm not even the biggest Daniel Garcia fan, but even I recognize when someone's over, you got to capitalize on it. They didn't, and I think Tony's hoping that they can reheat him back up in time to dethrone Jericho at some point down the road. When that is, I don't know. I feel like it's got to be Daniel Garcia. With the story they told with him, it has to be Garcia. So I'm thinking it will be. When, again, I don't know. But no one else really makes any sense. At Kyle Rochelle 19, he says, I'm looking forward to both WarGames matches. Why does everyone only care about the men's match? If Becky Lynch returns on Friday, will people finally care about the women's match? Mainly because Becky is a part of it. Yeah, because the build for the women's match has not been good. I'm looking forward to the women's match. I'm sure there's people that aren't looking forward to it. But I'm not, let's put it this way. It's not that I don't care about the women's match. It's not that I'm not looking forward to it, because I care and I am looking forward to it. But I'm not excited for it. Let's put it that way. I'm excited for WarGames in general. I'm not excited for that particular match. Only because the build has been so fucking abysmal. Damage Control have no heat. They've lost at every major turn in recent months. There's really no reason for the match. The heel team kind of has to win. Rhea and Mia being involved is kind of not pointless, but like they're not really have anything to do with Damage Control. They're just already feuding. So they were just recruited on because, Candice isn't there and all this other shit. So they just kind of made do with what they had and put Mia and Rhea on the team. And now we're going to end up with a fifth mystery person on Friday. If it is someone like a Candice or a Raquel Rodriguez or whatever, even less people will care because that would be a joke. That would be a complete waste of a spot. It has to be someone like a Sasha or a Becky in order for it to really be worthwhile. But no, it's because the build has been so abysmal, and to be completely honest with you, it was hard to care about the Bloodline WarGames match up until last Friday when they did that Kevin Owens angle on SmackDown. I was more excited for that than the women's, but the build wasn't overly great, and this is part of the problem when you have Survivor Series 3 weeks after another show. Triple H didn't make the schedule. I'm sure they'll fix that for next year, if not have no pay-per-view at all before Survivor Series for like 5 or 6 weeks. But they had to do a WarGames build in 3 weeks. They were dealt a bad hand, and this is what we got. So I'm thinking it'll probably, be a good match. It will definitely be a good match, but it's hard to care currently because it's like, that brawl on Raw to end the show this week was very fucking lame. The setup last week was lazy, and even the initial week when they set it up was basic, but it was like, when Bianca screamed WarGames, I'm like, okay, cool. Didn't get me excited. They have like 3 days to get me excited. They have until SmackDown to get me excited. If it's not there, then I probably won't be as excited as I should be. This is probably the least hyped I've been for a WarGames match in the 5 years since they brought it back to WWE as part of NXT. I was probably even more excited for the women's one last year in NXT 2.0 than I am for this one because the build's been so abysmal. Hamir 0287 is their question, or their question is rather. Thank you, Hamir, for sending in a question. Who would you like to see Roman face at the Rumble between Sheamus and Kevin Owens? Strong arguments for both and both getting good reactions. Good question. I know Kevin probably makes more sense because he's like, I want Roman. If his team wins, then he can get that match with Roman. My problem is this, and I've always said this, why I don't want to see that match. Does it make sense? Sure. I feel like Owens is, him giving Bloodline their comeuppance should be honestly, his issue is with the Usos anyway. They were the ones that cost Kevin the title against Roman Reigns. So which is why I want to see Owens and Zayn versus the Usos and beating the Usos for the tag titles at WrestleMania. The reason I don't want to see KO and Roman is not because the match wouldn't be good, but we've already seen it 3 fucking times, and yeah, it was 2 years ago, but Kevin Owens will not and should not beat Roman Reigns. So at that point, he's just suffering a 4th loss to Roman. Even if it's clean, it's like, okay, what was really accomplished there? Like, they're ruining any momentum that Owens had by feeding him to Roman. Who cares? At this point, we don't know how much longer Roman's going to be champion. Continue to give him fresh opponents. The Brock matches just got tiresome after a while, but at least the SummerSlam match was great. Logan Paul, say what you will, and he didn't deserve it in storyline, but it was a fresh match, and it was a great match. So, listen, I know Roman and Sheamus isn't a fresh match per se, but let's put it this way. We haven't gotten it even longer since, like Kevin Owens and Roman we got 2 years ago. We haven't had Roman versus Sheamus one-on-one in probably like 4 or 5 years. They had good matches together. I wasn't a fan of some of their matches in 2015 because the Sheamus character was so fucking boring. Roman Reigns was so fucking boring. But they've reversed the roles, and Sheamus is, in the 12 or 13 years he's been on the company's main roster, he has never been hotter than he is right now. Like, for real. So I would take advantage of that, give him the title shot, and do it at Rumble. Is he going to win? No. But still, it's a fresher match than KO versus Roman. Not that it would be a better match. Both matches would be good, because the Kevin Owens and Roman matches were always great as well. And then Sheamus can lose that as well. And I think Sheamus should obviously be the one to be going through for the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania, as other people have said, if not at like next year's Clash show if they do one. I don't know if they can hold out that long. But still, that's what I would do personally, and we'll see if they go in that direction. At Reborn Again, let's see. John Ritland from the Twitter machine, his first question was, again, I'm going through my tweets right now to find the questions because I didn't put them in a document yet. That's just that's where we're at today. But his question was, so what WarGames match would you have closed Survivor Series, and why? Obviously the Bloodline one, because I just mentioned the women's one should be good. Don't get me wrong, but especially if it's not like if Sasha comes back on that show, like, okay, that's a big enough moment. I get it. The men's one is a far bigger deal. There's no stakes in either of them, but the Bloodline finally have met their match in Drew, Brawling Brutes, and Kevin Owens. It has a better story. It's had a better build. Granted, for like the 2 weeks they've had to build it up. But I'm just far more excited for that one than I am the women's, although both matches are going to be very good, I assume. The women's match could end up even being better than the men's, but I feel like there's a bigger story to tell with the men's. It's just a bigger deal. So I would close the show with the men's one. His second question, non-wrestling related, but roughly with a month left of 2022, what would you say were the most surprising and most disappointing movies of the year, and why? Alexis and I were just talking about this like a week ago, because we saw a lot of movies this year. It's hard to remember like exactly what I saw, but just off the top of my head, I'm sure we'll discuss this and we'll revisit it at the end of the year if someone else asks the question about it. But like, I just saw The Menu last week. We saw The Menu last week. I thought it was good. A lot of people thought it was like great, excellent. I mean, I thought it was fine. I thought it was good. I didn't love the movie. I'm not a fan of like the weird fucking shit, and there was a lot of weird shit in it, but whatever. Sometimes that does make for the best movie. I saw the Marvel stuff. I thought Black Panther was great, but you're asking like most surprising? Probably maybe Bullet Train, to be honest with you. Bullet Train, I thought it would be like, I saw the trailer. I didn't know much about it at all. I knew Brad Pitt was in. I knew a couple other familiar faces were in the movie. I didn't know a lot of what to think about it before going in. I saw the movie, I'm like, holy fuck, that was probably my favorite movie of the year. Bullet Train was amazing. So that might be my most surprising. I'm trying to think of what else we saw. Nope was good. That was a very good movie. I'm trying to think of what else we saw. And a lot of them are just not coming to mind. Morbius was fucking awful. I don't know if I was overly excited for that. That might be the most disappointing. Nope wasn't like amazing to me, so I guess I could say that was disappointing, but it was good enough to not be disappointing, I think. Probably Morbius. I mean, Morbius wasn't just bad. That was like funny bad, because it was like comically bad. So I guess that would kind of fulfill that quota. I'm trying to think of what else I saw. I saw Sonic 2. That was surprisingly good. You know what, actually? Most disappointing? Scream. I was really looking forward to Scream, and then we saw it. I mean, a lot of people liked it. I thought it was fucking dog shit. I thought that movie was awful. That was probably... That and Morbius were the two worst movies I saw this year. Scream was probably worse because, I mean, I didn't really have much fun with that movie at all. I at least had fun with Morbius because Morbius was terrible, but, I mean, that was, like, funny bad. Like, The Room. It kind of gave me The Room vibes. Whatever I just said, fucking Scream 5 or 6 or whatever it was just fucking terrible. So, yeah, that would probably be the most disappointing of the year for me. Most surprising, probably Bullet Train. Bullet Train was great, and you know, I was already expecting it to be good, but I wasn't expecting it to be as good as it was. So I enjoyed those, and again, I'm sure there's more I'm not thinking of. We saw Black Panther recently. We saw The Menu. We're actually seeing Knives Out today. 2 Glass Onion. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm hoping that's gonna be good because the first one I fucking loved. So we will see. Noob, back to him. Noob_N_Co TV. What matches would you want to add, or would you want to be added to WrestleMania 39 next year? Besides the rumored matches like Becky versus Ronda, maybe add Io versus Asuka Sky, or Asuka versus Io Sky for story purposes, and bring back the Money in the Bank matches on both nights. Yeah, I agree with all three. Honestly, I mean, listen, every year at WrestleMania, we always have women's matches, but we never have women's matches that don't have a title on the line. And I think Asuka and Io, if they can get people to care more about Io between now and then, because Damage Control has been a complete bust, then yeah, I feel like Asuka and Io would be a really good non-title match for that show. I don't want to see Asuka as Raw Women's Champion, but yeah, I don't think she should be. I think Bianca should be in that Raw Women's Championship matchup. But yeah, I feel like that'd be a great non-title match. So the ones that you mentioned, Becky, Ronda, Asuka, Io, Money in the Bank, that's 3. We're obviously we have to have Owens and Zayn versus the Usos. Cody and Roman is the match I want to see for the main title. I already mentioned that. Stone Cold, if he comes back, you could do Stone Cold and Cena. Cena and Theory is another one that's pretty fucking obvious for WrestleMania, I feel like, unless they go in a different direction. Obviously, Rey and Dominic is another one that we're getting. Bianca and Rhea, if not Bianca and Charlotte. Those matches make sense. I mean, again, you could drag out the Rhea and Beth feud until WrestleMania and then do Rhea and Beth and then Bianca and Charlotte. I would be totally okay with that. So those are a lot of matches right there. I'm trying to think what else on SmackDown. Oh, I mentioned Gunther and Sheamus for the Intercontinental Championship. That's another match I want to say. I can't book like a U.S. title match because I don't know who's going to be champion by then. It's changed hands quite a bit in recent months, so I'm not sure. I don't know what you do with AJ. I don't know what you do with Finn. I don't know what you do with Edge. I don't want to see Edge versus Finn Balor again at WrestleMania. I hope that's over before then. I don't know what you do with those guys. But the other matches, those are a lot of matches right there. I hope they go with most, if not all of them, because I feel like they'd be pretty fucking good. You know, Rollins, if he's free. Rollins and, like, Logan Paul, if he's back by then, which I'm not sure if he is. Or, like, Orton, we don't know if he'll be back by then. Orton and Riddle would be a good match if he turns heel on him by then. All of those would be great matches, I feel. Next question from Matt E13A. Do you think Mustafa Ali's push will change anytime soon? I don't. I mean, if they keep fucking booking him to look like a loser, then why would anyone give a shit and why would he get a reaction? I don't. I mean, it's been weeks of the same thing. I feel like Triple H has kind of typecast him as a loser with heart, but guess what? A loser with heart is still a loser. No one cares. So, I mean, he's on the show weekly now, which is better than what he was doing before, which was nothing. He was on fucking Main Event, if that. I mean, I guess it's better than that, but the guy's not going to get beyond a certain level being booked the way that he has been lately. I don't see it changing. Maybe he picks up this upset win, but it's going to take a lot more than just this upset win to get people to care about Mustafa Ali. I mean, he has negative momentum right now. At E13A's second question, will Braun Strowman become Intercontinental Champion again? By beating Gunther, he could. I really hope he doesn't, though, for a few reasons. Listen, Braun is very over. I can attest to that. I was there at SmackDown last week. He was one of the most over people in the entire show. Gunther should be champion at least through Mania. His reign has been so great. There's still more matches he can have. I still want to see Sheamus be the one to take the belt off of Gunther. I just feel like that makes the most sense. Could you have him take it off of Gunther and then like Sheamus takes it off? Or could you have Braun take it off Gunther and then Sheamus takes it off Braun? I guess, but I don't really want to see that. I mean, Braun and Sheamus, cool. I feel maybe they had a match on Raw a while ago. I don't remember. I feel like they may have. I know that was a match I wanted to see a few years ago, but Gunther's just on another level right now. I really feel like it should be Sheamus finally getting his win over Gunther. But anyway, really make that championship feel important. Yeah, no, will he be champion again at some point? He could be. The thing with what really sours me on Braun as Intercontinental Champion is that legitimately, of all the reigns that Braun has had in WWE, all the title reigns he has had, literally none of them have been good. None of them. His Intercontinental Championship reign lasted all of a month and a half, if that. Completely forgettable reign that most people probably don't even remember. He was tag team champion, 2 or 3 times? The Nicholas one was a joke, and that lasted all of 24 hours. He was champion with Rollins for a month. He may have been champion again at another point that I don't remember, but I know he was tag champion at least twice. And then he was also Universal Champion too, and that reign was pretty mediocre. He was champion for several months, but no one really seemed to give a shit because it was during COVID, and he only feuded really with Bray Wyatt. He wasn't given strong opponents. No one gave a shit. So I feel like Braun's a guy that I know he always said, he needs the world title. He's had enough accolades. I don't think he needs the Intercontinental Championship. I feel like he can be over without the title. He doesn't need the title. No thanks. Also from at U13A, WarGames or WarGames, he says. Now, it's stemming from a question I put out on Twitter yesterday, if you saw it. And it's not just WarGames or WarGames. He's spelling it WarGames is one word, or is it WarGames as far as war and then games? That is my question, because WWE, as other people have pointed out, have spelled it both fucking ways on their website for weeks now. For the longest time, unless I'm wrong, I thought in NXT it was spelled WarGames is one word. And I mean, Emmanuel here, E13A, spelled it as WarGames with, capital W, with the rest are lowercase letters. WWE, I thought always spelled it as WarGames is one word, but the G in games was capitalized. But I've seen it spelled as WarGames on the poster with 2 separate words. Does it really matter? No, it doesn't make a difference at all. But as someone who's a writer and writes about this shit, and I care about the semantics and the little nitpicky bullshit, it does bother me. Really feel like they should clear that out. Maybe WarGames is the name of the show, but the match is one word with the G being capitalized. A lot of you don't give a shit, so I'll move on. But it does bother me, though, that it hasn't been rectified or clarified yet. Final question for the Thanksgiving Eve episode from Bill Meister, 88. His question was, you've interviewed a lot of talent within WWE or AEW over the years. Who's been the best to interview, and who's been a disappointment or been difficult? That's a good question. I get asked this a lot as far as when people, they have me on their show and they ask me what's been your favorite interview and stuff. I'm sure I do have favorites. I feel like the best to interview probably, because I've interviewed in the last 2 years since COVID started, well over 200 people. Probably closer to 250 by now. And they've all been good to great. I really haven't had a bad one. There hasn't been a bad one. There really hasn't been. Braun, speaking of him, the first time I spoke with him, and he's a nice guy, he was kind of a disaster. Not really because of anything he did, but he was driving, and the interview's here on the channel, I think, but he was driving, and it was at least on my show, but he was driving at the time, and he lost service. He went through a fucking tunnel, so they had to call me back. It was a disaster. And this was early on when I was still, when I started doing interviews with WWE. So I was I was freaking out. Nowadays, if that happened, it's okay, they'll just call me back. And it wasn't over Zoom, too. It was over the phone. So that was a nightmare. I'm trying to think. I don't really think there's been any other, disappointing or bad ones. Because, again, everyone's been good to great, even the non-wrestling ones within WWE and AEW and people like that. I mean, I've interviewed a lot of, sports stars and entertainment people and directors and, celebrities and whatever from past and present. And they've all been great. I don't think there's ever really been a disappointing one, though. I'm trying to think, and none really comes to mind. I don't really have a horror story as far as this was a disaster. The best, though, I think is pretty simple. I mean, I've interviewed a lot of big names. Cena was really cool for the experience of speaking to Cena, and he couldn't have been nicer. Cena was really cool. CM Punk, I talked to a week after that. He was, bucket list item of mine. He's not the most friendly guy on the phone, but he was cool. But my favorite, the best, would probably be around that point, literally within a week of those interviews. It was during Mania Week as well last year in 2021. William Regal. If only because I had requested him so often from WWE to the point where they were probably fucking annoyed at me. And he had nothing going on. He was the GM of NXT at the time. he wasn't really, he doesn't do a lot of, or he didn't do a lot of interviews at the time. He does a lot more interviews now. But he was tremendous. I mean, he was obviously the person who got me into wrestling, and is still my favorite to this day. And again, this was back when no one really, I don't want to say no one gave a shit about him, but he was, kind of under the radar in WWE. He wasn't as big of a name as he is now in AEW as far as being all over the show and whatnot. So it meant a lot for me to get him. They gave me him during Mania week. I got to talk to him for 25 minutes. I got to tell him, I literally, because I've said this before, the Matthews name, it's not my real last name. I got the Matthews last name from him. His real name is Darren Matthews, and I thought it complimented my first name well, because my real last name didn't sound as good with Graham, which is an English name. My real last name is Italian, so I'm like, oh, let's go with something more English sounding, and his last name was Matthews. I'm like, that'd be a nice nod to William Regal, so. And I also got to tell him that when I met him almost exactly a year later at Mania weekend this year. So no, he was amazing. That's probably the best one. There have been so many, like Logan Paul, really made me a fan of him when I talked to him in person. I got to interview him in his locker room before SummerSlam this year. That was a fucking surreal experience. You can ask RJ because he was there for that though. That was really cool. Talking to Becky and AJ Styles in person this year at Mania weekend was great. Yeah, Triple H was also a real surreal one because it's fucking Triple H, and he was awesome. And also The Undertaker too. The Undertaker was really cool both times I talked to him. And, when I talked to him over Zoom both times this year, he was awesome. Matt Hardy was another cool one. I had been asking him. I tried to get him for a long time, and it just never worked out. But I got him earlier this year to promote his podcast. I did that one for Bleacher Report, and he was really cool. Talking to Jeff Hardy in person last year over Survivor Series weekend was really fucking cool. There's been a lot. When I talked to Bayley for the first time, she was cool. I'll end here because there's so many to even. I'd be here for another hour listing off every interview and the story behind each one. But to answer your question, the best probably being Regal. The most difficult or disappointment, really none of them. I'm sure there has been one oh yeah, they were cool, but not as cool as I thought they would be. It's honestly the people they don't really expect to be awesome that end up being fucking awesome. And some of these people have even followed me afterward. I interviewed Rey Mysterio last year, and he followed me on Twitter afterward, which was so random. And I'm like, hey, that's fucking cool. So, yeah, stuff like that's has been awesome. So I've been very fortunate in the last 2 years to get to talk to a lot of cool people. I'm very thankful for that. I'm thankful for you guys on this Thanksgiving Eve episode of the show, for supporting the show, for sending in your great questions, for listening and sharing and all that other stuff, all the great feedback. It really does mean the world. I mean, we've been doing the show now for 9 years. 2013 will mark 10 years that we've been doing #AskGSM, which is fucking crazy. But I am thankful for all of you, for all of that, for supporting my shit. Thank you for checking out. And this was another special interview I did, but Seth and John Moxley for Bleacher Report, talking all about the Shield this past week. That was pretty cool to get a WWE and an AEW star involved in the same article, and both are top stars. That was awesome. So check out that article when you get a chance. I was really proud of that one. I stayed up super fucking late to do it, but it was well worth it. And, yeah, so check that out. Check out all the other stuff here coming to the channel in the coming days. We're talking to Bianca Belair, speaking of interviews, cheap plug, the Raw Women's Champion. New interview with her in video form over Zoom, coming to the channel here on Friday, on the same day my interview with her drops on Bleacher Report in article form. You'll get a sneak peek of it in audio form on the Thanksgiving episode of WrestleRant Radio tomorrow, so cheap plug there. And I will be at SmackDown again on Friday. I will be at Survivor Series as well on Saturday. So I'm looking forward to both shows. They should be a lot of fun. I know there's going to be a post-show media conference, not conference call, but a media scrum after Survivor Series. I'll also be there for that as well. So I'm looking forward to all of that, and I'm hoping to post all the videos of said stuff here on the channel in the days to come. So with all that being said, guys, have an awesome one. Thank you so much for checking out the show. I appreciate you. But I forgot to mention, as I said earlier, though, you could send in the questions if you would like for next week's episode on Twitter at WrestleRant with #AskGSM, on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a question on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, on the comment section down below in this very video, I'll include your question in next week's edition. I didn't answer any Thanksgiving-themed episodes this week, but, I'm looking forward to having turkey tomorrow and stuffing and all that other sort of shit. Really looking forward to that and excited for the food, per usual. And then it's on a Christmas, which is wild that it's right around the corner, as it always tends to be every single year. But have a great holiday, guys. I'll talk to you next week. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.